In the second part of the database management lecture, we will look at some of the concepts that relate to data. First, we will look at data integrity. What does it mean? It means the validation of data. Remember, when the data that goes into the database management system is not valid, we say that a concept known as garbage in, garbage out. That means the information that goes in is not correct or proper, then the information that comes out of the database management system is also not proper or not validated. What do we do to validate data? We can perform so many different checks. Here are some examples. We can check for alphanumeric data. We can check for a range. What do you mean by checking for a range? So in the case of an age, if you are storing the age of a member, obviously it should not be more than 120, or for that matter 150. And also the age cannot be a negative number. We could perform a range check that says that the value entered must be between 0 and say 130. Here are some examples of validity check. For example, the first name. It must be an alphabetic character. It cannot be K424N, so we can check for the fact that the first name comes from the alphabet. Postal code must be numeric. We can check for that. Annual fee cannot exceed, for example, a certain value. We can check for that as well. So these are some of the examples of validity check. Now that we have looked at the validity check, we will look at how data is organized and arranged in what we call a database hierarchy. At the very top of it is a database server. A database server may contain multiple database applications. Each of the database applications consists of, for example, tables, queries, forms, etc. And tables, for example, consist of fields and records. Remember, one of the fields would be the primary key. Primary key is one that would uniquely identify a row of data. Also, each table may contain something called a data dictionary. What is a data dictionary? Data dictionary is one that gives information about the contents of the table. Here is an example of a data dictionary. In this particular case, we have all the fields, and the data dictionary here gives details of all the information. For example, take state. The field size is 2. You can have 2 characters. And caption is state. Is it required? Yes. And so on. So this particular screen illustrates the contents of the member table, all the fields and the characteristics of each field, which is known as the data dictionary. Incidentally, the first field has a particular sign, and this sign is known as the primary key. What is the primary key? Primary key will uniquely identify each member by its value. In other words, by specifying a value for member ID, a particular record can be retrieved, and that would be a unique record. Let us recap what we did so far. We said about data hierarchy. How did data hierarchy come into place? Of course, we have a server. Let's consider this a server. And this is the database server. Database server can have multiple database applications. For example, let's say that one of them is a student processing system. That is one application. Remember, this is a server. We will use a DBMS to basically design this. This incidentally is a database application system that we design. We can also have, for example, account receivable database application system. So likewise, in a database server, that's one here. In a database server, we can have multiple database application systems. Now, this particular database application system may consist a couple of things. What are those? I'll explain those things now. This application system is made up of tables, forms, queries, and so on. And incidentally, what else can you have? You can have reports, and the other two ones are, one is a macro, and you can also have modules. Incidentally, in your lab, for example, you would have designed, what would you have designed? I believe you would have designed tables, you would have designed forms, queries, and reports. So if we take, for example, a database management system such as Access, it will let us combine all these things and create a database application system. Now, having said that, the next thing that we need to do is to further expand tables. What do we have in tables? We have the following. A table contains basically fields, and in the fields there are one field or one or two fields combined together, or one or more fields combined together, known as primary key. So those are fields. Then of course, with these fields again consist of what? They consist of records. Sorry, fields together make up records. So these are some of the things that together define the data hierarchy. Now the next set of information that we will look at how to process the data. We can add, change, delete data. We can also basically retrieve data using queries as well. Adding, changing, and deleting will not be discussed in detail because it is covered in some detail in the lab. Defining queries. What are the different ways in which we can define the queries? We can basically come up with a query by example where we have a visual programming interface that will let us define the query by an example. When we define the query in this way, an SQL code is generated by Access that will be executed to display the information. Now here is an example. How do we create a query? A simple query wizard will help us create a query. In this case, we are creating a query from a table known as the member table. The first thing to do is to select from the available fields, the fields that we need to display in response to a query. By clicking on this button, we will assemble all the fields that need to be displayed. Once we do that, then we have to give this query a name. A name has been given here. Then by executing this query, by calling this name and double clicking on this name, we can display the results as here. This brings us to the end of this discussion on part 2.